Before I started my MBA, I was always pretty curious to know what MBA classes were like, whether I'm going to find them useful or whether they're going to be pretty boring or exciting because I had great professors. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to give you guys all an inside peek into what MBA classes are like, everything from kind of a high level down to the weeds and little details, where in today's video, I'll be showing you guys screenshots of my actual assignments and things like that. So if you're interested in any of that, get ready for an interesting video about MBA academics. With that said, going into our agenda, I'll first be providing an overview into Wharton's academic structure throughout the 2-year program. I'll then share what classes have been like. And lastly, provide some thoughts on whether or not MBA classes are actually useful. I'm going to actually be basing a lot of what I talk about today on the questions you guys asked on my Instagram when I posted a Q&A about MBA academics. And I think moving forward, I'm going to be doing this a lot on Instagram where I post Q&As to see what you guys are interested in and want me to talk about. And so feel free to check out my Instagram if you're interested and want to kind of ask those questions for me to base my content around. All right, now first up, let me briefly share with you Wharton's academic structure. Now, at a high level, Wharton's academic curriculum can be broken down into 3 parts, which are your core fixed classes, your core flex classes, and then your major. Your fixed core are fundamental business classes that all students either need to take or can waive out of through credentials or exams that happen before the semester begins. And these classes ensure that all students have a baseline understanding of the important pillars of business. Next are flex core classes, which also cover basic business subjects, but they give you multiple options to choose from to fulfill the requirement, hence the word flex. And for example, some of the ones I'm planning to take are responsibility in global management, managing the established enterprise, innovation and operation strategy, and impromptu speaking. Lastly, you have your major, and Wharton gives you a ton of different options to choose from, and you can even make your own if you want. The fixed and flex core take up the bulk of your first year, but if you are able to waive out of some of those required courses, which I highly recommend, then you're able to squeeze in 1 to 2 electives or major requirement courses, which are usually a lot more interesting. Then in your second year, you're able to fill in your course load with mostly electives and major requirement courses, which can be a lot more interesting and fun, but I'm still just the first year, so later on I'll have to confirm exactly how fun those classes actually are. Now, since you're watching this video, I'm guessing you might be interested in getting an MBA. And one of the major roadblocks for me personally in terms of getting an MBA was getting a good GMAT score. And I want to share with all of you guys a great resource that helped me get a 750 on the GMAT called Target Test Prep. When I first started studying for the GMAT, I was pretty overwhelmed because the test is super tricky. It actually gets harder the better you do, so it kind of messes with your mind a bit. And also there are just so many subjects to go over. And so I looked on Reddit and Google to see what the best resources out there were, came across Target Test Prep, also known as TTP. And what I ended up really liking about it after I went through the entire course was that it covers all the different materials and topics in the GMAT on a topic by topic basis so that you can feel prepared for any question that comes up on the GMAT. Here's how it works. For both quant and verbal, TTP breaks down all of the individual topics that appear on the GMAT, and with them come lessons and practice tests ranging from easy, medium to hard that lets you hone your skills and master each topic. TTP is a one-stop shop that covers both quant and verbal sections of the GMAT, and it's the only company on GMAT Club with a triple-digit 5-star rating. You're also able to create a personalized study plan to make sure that Target Test Prep is working best for you. And so if you're interested, you can try out TTP for just $1 for 5 days if you use my link down in the description below. Feel free to check them out if you're interested. All right, now next up, let me share with you all what MBA classes are like. Harry asked a good question about the academic theory versus the practical use of the courses at Wharton. And I think if I had to use one word to describe the courses in general, I would say interactive is probably the word I would choose. And so what I would mean by that is that the classes in general try their best to mirror the real world. And I'll give you 4 examples from the classes I took this past semester. Starting with my innovations class, the first few weeks were a bit more academic, where the professor just taught us about the different ways and strategies we could implement when coming up with new business ideas. And then about midway into the quarter, our job was to come up with one business idea that we had to create a 1-minute pitch for. And then so for one class, for 80 minutes straight, we heard 80 different business ideas because they were 1 minute each. And our job at the end was to vote on our top 10 to 20 or so. And then based on those votes, half of the ideas were cut and the other half made it to the next round. So then there were 40 ideas left backed by groups of 2. And now we had to create 2-minute pitches, which were reviewed again. And then the ideas were cut into 20. And then so the groups of 2 that were left that didn't get picked had to form with the other ideas left to now create groups of 4. Then those groups of 4 were in charge of creating a 4-minute pitch, which we all pitched again and rated, and then the top winners were selected. And I'm sure you guys are all a bit curious as to what business idea I pitched. And mine, I didn't actually really honestly take it super seriously. And I pitched this idea at the beginning of a hangover prevention pill that is really popular in Korea and bringing that to the US. But this was like my first presentation slide when I did the 1-minute pitch. And I guess, I kind of made the pitch a little bit humorous, and I think people liked it. And so it just kept moving on to the later rounds. And eventually our 4-minute pitch, which you can see right here, eventually got a lot more legitimate because it is still, somewhat of a legitimate idea. But I think what I really learned from this class was just what you need to do in order to convince an audience really quickly about your idea. That's what the biggest takeaway for me was. The next class I want to talk about is one I actually enjoyed, which I never expected to enjoy, which was statistics, because I've taken AP statistics and I took it in college. I did not enjoy them, but this time around, my professor was actually really engaging. And it was also a pretty hands-on kind of class where we did have things that were normal, like quizzes and exams. But for our individual assignments, we had to use this software called JMP, which I guess a lot of statisticians use. And we kind of learned how to run regression models and take a look at correlations, all the different important statistical measures and metrics that we learned about in class. And so that was another interesting class that was a little bit more interactive, where we were actually using a tool that a lot of statisticians actually used. Now, clearly, one of the things I didn't learn in that class was to pronounce the word statistician.
Statistician.
The third class I want to talk about is my valuations course, and Wharton is known for its finance classes, and based on this first one, I definitely am interested in taking more and majoring in finance. I did used to work in investment banking, and so a lot of what I learned in this first class was not super new to me, but the professor was super insightful and had a lot of really interesting stories. And I thought the class was set up pretty well, especially for beginners, where we had a lot of individual and group assignments where we had to actually build financial models. They were not like super detailed or anything, but I thought pretty good way to apply the academic theory, some of which was actually new to me, into actual models that we built for the class. Now, for these 3 classes I just mentioned, there were typically around 60 to 80 people in each classroom, or maybe less depending on how many people wanted to actually show up to class each day. But for this last class I wanted to mention, which was communications, it only had 8 people. This was a public speaking course required for all MBA students, and across 6 weeks, we had to come up with a 1-minute, 2-minute, and 5-minute persuasive speech. And I don't do a lot of public speaking, so this really forced me to flex a public speaking muscle. I know I make YouTube videos, but I think public speaking is like a different ball game, and I actually really enjoyed it. And I think next semester I have different communications classes that I can take, one of which could be like writing based, another is kind of like storytelling, but I wanted to do another public speaking related one. So the next one I'm taking next semester is impromptu speaking. So hopefully this gives you all a taste as to what MBA courses are like. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments below. I will also need to mention that these 4 classes are the ones I enjoyed the most throughout my semester so far. I will say that some of the courses I took, like microecon and marketing, I don't feel like I really learned that much. So I don't want to paint like an overly rosy picture about MBA courses. Not all of them are amazing where you'll just learn a ton. Some of them you just kind of have to like slog to get through, to be honest. That's actually probably a good segue into the next part of the video. So with that said, let me next talk about how useful classes actually are. Now, to answer this, I want to give you guys all some context about my background in case you're not familiar with it, so that you know where I'm coming from. So I majored in business administration at UC Berkeley, then worked in investment banking as an analyst a few years at JP Morgan, then started a fashion brand for 2 years, so consumer and startup related experience. And now for rareliquid, I'm in the digital media / education space. And so I've worked on 2 startups for the past 4 years and have like a baseline understanding of what business is like. And so the first thing I want to talk about is answering a question I got on Instagram that was asking about how useful the classes are versus what you learn when starting your own business. And it's probably not a shocker to a lot of you that there is no comparison in terms of starting your own business or just working in the real world versus what you learn in the classroom. For example, when I was working on my fashion brand, a lot of what I learned about what marketing actually is were from Steve Jobs videos from YouTube and testing out Facebook ads and seeing how those actually work. And you really can't replicate that kind of experience in the classroom, no matter how many marketing frameworks or theory that you actually learn. True marketing is really learned when you actually execute. And that is something I would say about most business theory. you learn just way more in the real world. But this isn't really a complete knock only on MBA academics. I think it's true for any field, really. I mean, if you have a PhD, doesn't really matter. Doesn't mean you're going to be a great business person. I actually also hear from a lot of my CS friends that what they learned in the classroom does help, but you actually learn a lot more about coding on the actual job. With that said, I do think that MBA academics can hold value in 5 different ways, and let me go into each one of those. First, if you enter into an MBA without a business background, I do actually think, based on what I hear from my peers who come from that kind of situation or background, that the classes actually are pretty interesting and you do learn a lot, which kind of makes sense. Second, I think there are a lot of non-core and elective classes that can be pretty interesting. So for example, next semester, I'm taking an Intro to Python class, which I'm pretty excited about. So there's a lot of opportunity to learn from really good professors about topics and subjects that you may not really have good discipline to force yourself to learn about otherwise. Third, a lot of MBA courses bring in guest lecturers, and I think professors might do this oftentimes because that means that they don't actually have to lecture for a good number of classes. But anyway, the guests usually tend to be pretty interesting. I'm always interested to learn more about businesses, their stories, and what they think about the markets and stuff like that. And to give you guys an example, I'm taking an advanced private equity course in my second year, or I hope to anyway, where the professor will bring in a lot of guest speakers who work at top buy-side shops. And so I think that will be a pretty interesting class. The fourth way I think classes can be useful is in sparking new ideas or thoughts. And these tend to happen pretty randomly. And to give you guys an example of what I mean, I was in my valuations class and the professor was talking about how a lot of businesses tend to focus a lot of energy, time, and resources on divisions of their business that aren't generating a great ROI or return. And I thought about my own business, rareliquid, and the different parts of the business where we were putting in a lot of energy, time, and resources that was really not going anywhere. And so one example was our investing newsletter, where we were investing a few $1,000s a month, and I had a contractor working on that. And it wasn't really going anywhere. So I realized, wow, I should really just cut this and focus on what we do best, which was, creating really good content on our courses that we're building and stuff like that. And I think having that focus really helped me and rareliquid. And so that's an example. You do really have to execute on the ideas that you come up with. But I could see, for example, other students maybe in class, something that a peer or a professor says, like sparking a new business idea. Last but not least, the fifth way classes can be useful is really what you learn from your peers. I would say the vast majority of MBA courses tend to really foster a lot of discussion. And that's just because your peers are selected from a wide variety of different backgrounds, whether it's consulting, banking, marketing, consumer, etc. And people have usually anywhere from 2 to 5, 7 years of experience, and they provide some really interesting insights about what they used to do at Amazon for marketing or what someone used to do when they were back in consulting, etc. And so usually a lot of really good discussion that you can learn from. So are classes useful? I would say that at the end of the day, they are based on academic theory. So they do have their limits, but as I just kind of mentioned, they can be useful. I also really think it helps that most MBA programs have non-grade disclosure, meaning that they don't show your grades to employers, or it doesn't really matter what grades you get as long as you pass. And so that really allows you to really only focus on the classes that you really care about, which I'm definitely taking advantage of. I talk more about my thoughts on this in my latest TikTok, which I'll leave a link to down in the description in case you want to check it out. Also wanted to let you guys know that I am building a how to get into MBA course and giving away 50% discounts for those who sign up early using my Google form link down in the description below. Also wanted to give you guys a friendly reminder, if you're studying for the GMAT, check out Target Test Prep. Really helped me get a 750 on the GMAT. And lastly, you're going to see on the next screen a video on my first month in my MBA program and what my experience was like. Feel free to watch that if you're interested. That said, thank you all so much for watching. Hope to catch you all in the next video. Thanks so much and peace out.